Okay, well, that was a rather typical ragtime tune. Blind Boy Fuller, Big Bill Broonzy. They recorded dozens upon dozens of variations of that. More of the variations are in the lyrics. And I thought it would be an interesting idea to take a look at that progression and see what can we do with it? How can we make it more interesting? Well, the first thing we should do is notice that I'm using finger picks, so the sound of the guitar is a little louder, brasher perhaps. And the second thing we need to do is to make sure you're in tune with me. So just take this high E, and I should be tuned to pitch. And at this point, make sure your high E is tuned with me, and then stop the recorder and tune your guitar. And now I presume everything is in tune. And let's take a look. The chords that we're playing in a progression of this nature is just going to be a C chord, an E7th chord, an A7, or an A, and then to an A7, a D7, G, and back to a C. And then it repeats. The C, E7th, A, A7th, D7th, D7th, and then it stays on that G. And then you have the stop time. C chord, C7th, F. Now here you have a choice. You could do a diminished, or you could do a flat 7th. So at that point, let's do that again. You have a C, C, a C7th, an F, an A flat 7th, or the choice could be a C, a C7th, an F, and a diminished, and then back to the basic chords, the E, A7th, D7th, G7th, and C. So if you were finger picking, take a look at my right hand, and we basically just would use an alternating bass. And check on your tablature with this. The G, C chord, da, be do, ba da, a C7, D do, ba da, and F, do, I think I'll do a diminished. D, da, ba da, ba da, C, E, A7. Turn around. Okay, now let's see what we can do with this. The first thing that comes to my mind is when we have the C, the C7th, the F, the diminished, well, we can do a little tricks perhaps with our right hand. So if I play a first position C chord, and I can do a Gary Davis lick, just using now my thumb and index finger. So check out my right hand. I'm going to play thumb, index, thumb, thumb, index, index, thumb. I'll do that again. Thumb, index, thumb, thumb, index, index, thumb. Okay, now you could use 3 fingers, but it wouldn't have the same accenting, the same rhythmic quality. So we could start off in the first chord. We can do that roll where we're going from the 5th string, and we can either end on the 4th string or the 5th string. Then our next chord is a C7th. Well, we could play this regular C7th, All right, but take a look at my left hand. I think I'm going to do a Gary Davis C7. Oh boy, this is a fuller sounding, look at that chord. I'm using 5 fingers and playing 6 strings. So what is this? We're going to have our pinky and our ring fingers on the 3rd frets of the 1st and 3rd string, index finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd, middle finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th, and then my thumb, if I can, going over so it's playing the 3rd frets of the 5th and 6th. But don't worry, if you can't get the thumb to go over both the 5th and 6th, just over the 6th, that will be fine as well. So we could go with the roll on the C, and then play this Gary Davis C7th chord. And that sounded pretty cool. And then an F chord, doing that same roll, and then an A flat 7th, doing the same roll. So putting it all together, F, A flat 7th, and then I'm back into our chord progression. So that gave us one variation we could do. Well, we could also combine that, because with that I basically was doing the same right hand technique over all 4 chords. I could go an alternating bass for the first C, and then do the roll, and then an alternating bass for the F chord, and then do the roll with the A flat 7th. That's one idea. We could go with a roll and then just strum, a nice full strum, then another roll. And how about this time, go to a diminish, and we can go up, and they're all the same diminished chord. So that's sounding a little bit more complicated, more interesting to the ears of the listener. Da-dee-doo-ba-da. And then back into our progression. So right away, just by playing the full chords and using different right-hand techniques and putting them one against each other in different orders, we get a variation. We'll come back to this part because there's still more that we can play around with. After you've played this a bunch of times, well, you may think, oh, it's getting a little boring. So what can we do about that? Well, if we have a C chord here, where else do we have a C chord? Instead of playing this chord, here's a C chord, here's a C chord, and that's in our F fingering position, but it's up and we're on the 8th frets, and even this is a C chord. So I think I'm going to start with this. And now our next chord was an E, or an E7. So where do we have some E7s on the fingerboard? Let's take a look at this. Here, well, this is a D7th. If I move that up, that's an E7th, but I want to have some bass notes, so I use my index finger almost like a capo, and it's fretting the top 5 strings. So there we have an E7th. Well, we can take that C7th position, move it up to the 5th fret, and we have an E7th. But likewise, we can also do a Gary Davis fingering of an E7th, which is just like our C7th, but up here. Interesting. And here, so that's an E, and this would be an E7th. Oh, and there's another one that I think might even work better. If this is your B7th, If we slide that all the way up to the 7th fret, that would be an E7th. So now I'm thinking I can go up and let me use that E7th position, sounding good. And back in my mind, I'm thinking I want to take this melody and bring it all the way down from the high note and descend it. So I've got to the point where I have a C, an E7th. Now I need an A7th. That's an A7th. But that would be an A chord with an F fingering. But if I do this, I have an A7th. So I'm just barring the top 4 strings at the 5th frets, putting my middle finger on the 6th fret of the 3rd string. And I have a cool, I like that, A7th. Also, when we had this E7th down here, if I bring that all the way up here, I have an A7th. I have riches of choices here. Likewise here, this would be an A7th. Woo! Well, if I started off with the C, E7th, I'm going to do this A7. And I just put my pinky on the 7th fret of the 1st string, makes a nice. Now I need a D7th. That's too low. Well, let's try to find some more D7ths. Like an easy one is this. That would be a D7. That C7th position moved up. And again, I can do the Gary Davis version. This is a D7. The full position would be this, which is like an A chord, moved up to the 7th fret. And this becomes a D7th, but I can just basically just take the top 3 strings, because that A and the D notes, they fit in real well with a D7th chord. This is the D7th. I think we have a lot there. So now I can go. Now I want a D7th. I think that sounds good. Now a G chord. I could go to a 1st position G chord. I can go to, just as we had the A7th, I can use this G chord. I could use this G7th. But I think I'm going to choose either this one or this one. So I go slowly, always using an alternating bass on my right hand. Whoa, I like that. I like it. I like it. So that sounded pretty good. So I can now put it together. And one more time. And I opted there to go to a 1st position G chord, because that's always a cool little lick. And then I would have the C and the C7, F. Then I go up on my diminished chords, back to this. All right, well, that's one variation. Now, obviously, you can combine those with 1st position chords. Let's just try another one, just for the hell of it, yeah? We can start off with our 1st position. It's like a game. It's really just a game, and you can start to see which sounds you like, which textures you like best, and the end result is you come up with your arrangement. So if I start off with a 1st position C, and now instead of going to this E7th, I'm going to go to this E7th. And I'm thinking in back of my mind, I'm going to I'm going to try to see if I can go up the fingerboard. C, the E7th, now into this A, D, 7th, and that G7th, yeah, C. So do it, and now the second line. Using that, and now maybe this. And we're back to getting the idea. So we can really start to mix and match, and we can come up with some very interesting ideas. Let me just roll through what comes to the top of my head. So I'm going to start off just as we began the tune. But now I'm going to go up the fingerboard. A little slide. That G. I'll roll it. Roll it again. I think I'll do an alternating bass. And I love that diminished. And then okay, so now we've got quite a few variations for playing the basic arrangement. The basic arrangement one way, another way, 3 ways, 4 ways, and we can start having a lot of different approaches. I think though we can do a little bit more with this. When we have da da ba do ba do ba do 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 do. So we have some ideas, but you could also be playing single string runs. You could go. Let's see how we can structure those, how we can find some of those runs. Well, a Gary Davis approach would be now what is that actually? And it makes sense. He slides up to his C chord, and his pinky is catching the 8th fret, the 5th, 8th fret of the 2nd string, and on his right hand, index, thumb, index, thumb, index, thumb. So every other index, thumb, up and down. So let's take a look at the left hand now. We slide up. We have an open first string, which allows us to get down here. So that's all around, notes all around the C chord and the C7th. And now we're going into the C7th. And now we can do some runs. And again, even though we're in the bass strings, look at my right hand. And now for the A7th, we can either go with a nice roll like that, or play this chord. So this is an A7th. Reverend Davis used to play an A chord like this, like for 12 Gates to the City, just moving that down. And what is it? It's your index finger is barring the top 4 strings at the 1st fret, and your pinky and ring finger come down. Again, you're not going to play the 1st string. And you have this, which you can then, check out my right hand, do a roll. And it gives it an interesting texture. So the F, up, keep going. Now you can find lots of different runs that you can play. You can also combine. You could go a roll, another roll, and now play the bass. And now diminished. Yes. Just putting different phrases in different orders, and everything is coming up rosy and pink. What we'll do is this. Let me play it through quite a few times on a split screen, and that's what will be transcribed on the tab music. And see if it makes sense to you, and just try to do it very slowly and try to understand how we're changing the chords. And don't be afraid of going past that 5th fret, because you know all the chords past that. If you know a bunch of chords in the first 5 positions, the first 5 frets, well, all you have to do is figure out how to move them up the neck, and you have lots of variations. Are you ready? You want to try this? So let's slow it down, and we'll split the screen.